So on this demo, we're going to take your trees from this to something more like this. And I'm very excited to show you, and I know you can do it because it's not that difficult. All it's going to do is take some practice. So we'll start with an easy one, and stay tuned. I'm also going to show you why it's so important to keep those sky holes, how you can create volume in your trees, and also I'm going to share 3 great tips.
So let's start with a nice easy one to start with. So using a round brush, this is a size 10 Rosemary & Co sable blend. I quite like the Escoda Perlers as well. I'm just making this paper wet here and just creating a random shape. I say anybody can do this because there is no right or wrong. You know, a tree can be pretty much any shape. Now I'm going to mix some slightly thicker paint, so less water, more paint. Just go over that, but leave some of that lighter tone to come through. Try and leave all this white paper here because that's going to be so valuable later on in this little study. And now darker again. There's a little touch of burnt sienna in there as well. And we know at the base of the tree it's generally a little bit darker because it's receiving less light. And as a tree is not flat, we'll have dark areas throughout the tree as well. So now we need to do the tree trunk, but it needs to be connected to this tree. So this all has to be done wet into wet. So you do need to work fairly quickly. So notice I had a bit of dry brush there, some of the white paper coming through. Again, that just adds that extra element of sparkle in the painting. And they don't grow perfectly straight, so they've got a little bit of an angle there, another branch there. And this is where those sky holes, we can now use those. Just imagine where the branches are coming through, and the secret is you don't need to paint every branch, just 1 or 2, and that's all you need to do. And obviously the tree just looks like it's floating in the air, so while this is still damp here, we can just put a shadow underneath it there. And that's it. Keep it as simple as that. You don't need any more than that. You could maybe just 1 or 2 little smaller branches lower down side of the brush, some grass area. But that's it. That's that little study done. On to another one.
So that wasn't too difficult. Let's try another one, slightly more detailed. Also keep watching because I'll show you how you can use trees to make other objects in your paintings stand out. So this is much the same, so we'll just have a bit of piano music for a moment. I mentioned about 3 tips. This is the first tip. Do not worry about colour. It will just slow you down. If you want to paint loose watercolours, you need to be quick. Don't worry about matching the exact colours if you're working from a reference or say this demonstration. All you need to worry about is getting the right sort of hue, colour. The tone of value is more important, and the freshness of how you put the paint down. So put that out of your mind, worrying about exact matching colours. It's very difficult in watercolours to do that, and it's not really necessary. we'll do a few more and I'll talk you through some various different shapes of trees, maybe a clump of trees as well, and maybe add a building and a tree, and how to create distance. Remember, just have fun. Don't be too hard on yourself if you're a beginner. Keep going, it's great fun.
So being able to just confidently put trees in a painting is so useful, because say we've got a landscape here with, we'll say, a barn in the scene here. Let's just make up a scene here. Something like that. Doesn't really matter what it is, but quite often we'll need something to make this barn stand out. So that's when I would use a tree. Let's just put a chimney in here. This is should be a demo about painting trees, not barns, but trust me, we'll get there in a moment. So I could do with a barn in here just to explain what I'm doing. I'll do a demo on painting barns as well at some point. Barns always look good in watercolour. So there we are. I've got my barn, and it needs something to make it stand out. So that's dried now. So I've painted my barn in my landscape painting, and the painting's not working because the barn just doesn't stand out. So what would I do? I would probably, 9 times out of 10, make a nice strong dark green, fairly strong paint, and then I would use negative painting. So let's just make up a fence there. Now there's a fence inside there, and then I would use the tree here, and again, like we did on those other demos, I'll change the color and tone a little bit as we go. So there's a tree there. Let's have it a little bit lighter, a bit warmer. So you don't have to stick to greens. Let's go for some warm colors. Nice orange there. I'm just painting it very simply. There's a tree there on the side of that barn, and you can connect the tree to the barn. Let's make that side of the barn there darker and connect it up to there. Windows. Barn door. Dark in there. And over this side, it doesn't really work at the moment. So all we've got to do is put a tree next to it. So by practicing confidently being able to paint those trees, you should be able to put one in. Remember to leave those sky holes, because you don't want to put a tree in and then lose the light in your painting. We can make sure that doesn't happen. Right, plenty of sky holes there. Again, connection. And that tree looks a little bit flat at the moment, so all we need to do is put a few darks in there. So just 1 or 2 branches. Still damp. Connect that through there. Make a little lean-to. And if you do that scratching out, it's most effective if you're doing it in the dark areas there. We've got a little lean-to. So you can see that a tree is very useful to add interest. Let's put them a nice, could be a tall tree there. This house is behind a woodland. And sometimes I'll actually use my finger to mess up the edges there. Look. So as you can see there, with the trees, you can make something stand out a little bit more.
If you're enjoying it and you're new to the channel, please hit that like and subscribe. Even if you're not new to the channel, you may not have hit the subscribe yet, so do that and hit that notification bell because you'll get the notifications for all my videos. So the second tip is don't be shy with your paint. Squeeze out a good amount of watercolor paint, and when you're going for those darks, you need a decent amount of paint on that brush with the water. Obviously it still needs to flow, it's watercolor, it's not oil paint, but you do need a lot in there. If you don't put enough paint in with your water to create those darks, you'll end up with a weak watercolor painting. And likewise, when you want the paper to be wet, don't worry about put a lot of water on there. With practice, you'll know how much water to paint ratio you need, and the best way to learn is to paint.
And we can use trees to create the illusion of depth in our paintings. Say we've got a distant landscape. So that's potentially some trees off in the distance there. But the further they are away, the less detailed they are. So that's painting wet into wet. So as you want more and more shapes to retain, you need to add more paint. So less water, more paint. And generally speaking, trees further away are probably going to have more blue in them. So this is a long, long way away, half a mile away, a mile away. The trees are going to be tiny like this, just blobs of paint. And because it's very wet here, the paper, they're going to soften to pretty much nothing. So these are more sort of advanced techniques. So practice those ones we did at the beginning and work your way up to this. So now this is, again, slightly thicker paint and perhaps less blue in it. So notice again, I've got all this white paper left behind. Protect that because that is what's going to give your painting sparkle. So now the trees, still not really defined, they're still soft, and I'm still connecting them up to these smaller trees here. But we're now coming up to the foreground area. So the trees are perhaps getting a little bit more defined. So we'll have the odd one standing out on its own. You may notice I've been dipping into all these different colours. So the colours I've got in here is cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, azure crimson, burnt sienna, and ultramarine blue. But you could use any colours. So stronger, darker paint. So more paint to water ratio there. That's a bigger tree there. So that's a little bit closer to us maybe. And just keep varying that colour, mix into different colours. taller tree there maybe. So we've got tiny trees, very soft, no real edges, and now we're getting more and more detail as we come into the foreground to finally we've got some actual blades of grass maybe, which will really look like it's actually close to us. And this is only a very small little exercise I'm doing here, a little sketch. Again, I don't mind using my fingers to suggest a little bit of something there. And just like we practiced in the other demos, the trees will be perhaps a little bit darker towards the base, and we want this to have a bit of three-dimensional feel to it, but the further they are away, probably less detail they'll have. And again, let's just scratch out a branch there. Maybe in the foreground ones there, a little bit of detail. And when I've scratched out, I'll leave that white part there, but then I'll just paint into it there. By making it a little bit darker in the foreground here, we'll create that illusion of depth. So we've got a bit of light here. If you don't like the shape of something, change it. But what I've got to be careful is I don't add a load of water to this. So any changes I make here need to be quite thick paint. So I'll change that to a more rounded tree. But because the paper's still wet, I can do that. And I know I've said it a few times on this demo, but connection. I like to connect all my shapes up. It gives a sense of wholeness to the scene. Slightly less of something, we could just lift out a little bit there. We've created almost a landscape there with just a suggestion of some trees at various stages of visibility. One's off in the distance, hardly visible, to up close where they're now starting to take shape. But there's no stereotypical tree painted there. They're just shapes, but using those techniques we used earlier in the demo.
So well done if you've made it this far. There's one more to go. We've got a small clump of trees. I'm going to show you how we can connect the trees to the land and make those tree trunks look interesting.
Well, let's do another one, but let's make it even simpler. Let's do a collection of trees. And I quite like yellow ochre or raw sienna as my yellow for my greens. As you can see there, it gives it a very natural looking colour. So again, just a mass of trees. And when you get lots of trees together, we get a variation in colour. So all you need to do is just dip into another colour, a bit more yellow or a bit of blue. And we'll just get that variation there. And obviously we have taller trees. Again, leaving plenty of white paper to shine through for later. Maybe leave more than you think you need because you're inevitably going to cover it up. And now slightly darker towards the base of these trees. Marks above as well. Let's put some red. We do get some trees. They've got some colour in them. Let's do the land, which will just have a bit of a hill there, I'll say. Again, let's just throw some colour into the mix there. So this is all still wet. This is wet. So let's now connect the two up. So nicely loaded up brush, and thinner at the top, so thicker at the bottom. And they don't just grow trees straight up like that. Some of them do, but most of them will go change angle, off at different angles as well. If you do it quickly like that, you will get some interesting marks. And there'll be branches as well. And some will be lower down these trees. So now we're just moving the shapes about a little bit, making it more interesting. Maybe there's a bit of a bush down here. And all of a sudden we're getting a little bit of a woodland area. And then some of those branches through there. So always looking for connection. So if there's while the grass area here is still wet, we can use that to connect up to these trees here. Add another little bush there while it's still wet. And that's that exercise done.
If you're enjoying it and you're new to the channel, please hit that like and subscribe. Even if you're not new to the channel, you may not have hit the subscribe yet, so do that and hit that notification bell, because you'll get the notifications for all my videos. And if you're loving this sort of content, you can always join me on my website on a membership tier and get access to loads of videos, and also join me on a live Zoom call. And tip 3, it's quite simple: practice. Watercolour is a wonderful medium, but it takes a lot of skill. It's often referred to as a master's medium, and the way you can master it is to practice plenty, daily ideally. And simple exercises like this are a great way to do it. Have fun and don't put too much pressure on yourself. Paint scenes that you're comfortable with and work your way up to more challenging scenes, but master those core techniques. And I cover these core techniques in my videos, so do hit that like and subscribe.
If you want to know what these core techniques are, this would be a great video to watch.